Hey out there from the Badger Rock Greenhouse, welcome to our seed starting workshop. So it is March. March is really go time in the greenhouse if you're going to be starting your own seeds indoors. So I will share with y'all how to demystify knowing when to plant seeds and knowing how to plant seeds. Because it's not hard and it's a skill we should all have right now, especially in this time we're living in. Growing food is one way we can take care of ourselves and our community. So if you all want to come on over here and check out the seed packet, this is a pepper. If you look right here, it tells you how deep to plant it. My rule of thumb is to plant a seed about twice as deep as the seed is big. So if you look at a pepper seed, they look something like this. Think about how deep that is. That's like hardly deep at all, right? One thing that happens with some beginning gardeners is planting your seeds too deep. Maybe why they don't germinate and grow. So keep an eye out for that. It also says on a seed packet, thin too. This says 18 to 24 inches. That means once you plant your plants out in the garden, you want to make sure there's that much space between them so they have room to grow into their full size. So that's what that piece is telling you about. There's also an area that says sun or shade, how big they're going to get. And this part is the part that we're really focusing in on today. Starting indoors means starting the seeds indoors. So that's seed starting what we're going to do today. Some seeds can't be started indoors. They need to be planted outside directly into the garden. On your seed packet, that will either say sow outdoors, plant outdoors, or direct sow. So keep an eye out for that language too on your seed packet, because it might not be a type of seed that does well started inside before it's time to plant outside. If you check out the last little thing a seed packet tells you often is maturity. That's how long between planting the seed and expecting a harvest. So if I planted this seed inside in the greenhouse on March 15th, 75 days is like about a month and a half. So I would expect to wait a whole month and a half until I finally get a harvest from that plant. So that's what that piece of information is telling you. If you come on over here, you know, there are ways to tell what kind of plants are related to each other by just looking at their seeds. If you look collard greens, broccoli, and cabbage, their seeds look almost identical. These are cabbage family plants, and you can plant these at about the same time. If you check out the spinach and the beets, those are in the same plant family too, along with the Swiss chard. These are all plants that can be started at the same time. These are all plants that like to be direct seeded too, right out in the garden. Beets, spinach, and Swiss chard. So kind of a rule of thumb for thinking what should be planted directly out in the garden. Root crops, so beets, carrots, radishes, those are all crops you want to plant right outside in the garden, not in a pot inside. Because if you think about how they grow, their roots going to grow down and bump the bottom of the pot. To transplant them or move them out of their pot into the garden, you're going to wiggle their root. That's going to mess with their growing, and they just really do better if you plant them right out in the garden. If you look at a calendar, that's how you can tell when to plant. So it said right here 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. So depending on where you are in the country, that day is going to be different. Here in Madison, Wisconsin, it's about May 10th, but with climate change, that date keeps creeping earlier and earlier. So I estimate May 10th, but I also keep an eye on the weather forecast. What the frost date tells you, the last frost date, is that that's the last day temperatures are likely to go below freezing. So after May 10th, no more below freezing nights. You're pretty good to go to plant anything out in the garden after that date. So when you're counting back from your frost date, you just look at a calendar. So if it says 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost, you count back 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 weeks before that last frost would be April 12th. 6 weeks before that last frost would be March 29th. So for this bell pepper, that's suggesting you plant it around March 29th. If you are in our zone and your frost date is like our frost date around May 10th. All right, so that's how to tell when to plant. You can also just, once you've planted a season or two, you start to just have a calendar inside your head too. So the very first seeds that we plant in the Badger Rock greenhouse, our February seeds, are leeks, hot peppers, eggplants, and onions. Those are the 4 things we usually start in February. Those are the early plants. Those are the ones that might take like 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost date on the seed packet. Then we move into our greens, so our collard greens, our kale. Then we move into our tomatoes and things like that. But if you come on over here again and check out these other seeds, so if you have really big seeds like peas, beans, pumpkin, cucumber, squash, these seeds tend to prefer to be planted directly out in the garden too. Peas, you can actually get those in as soon as that ground is unfrozen. So sometimes that's as early as the middle of March. Pop them out in the garden. They will pop up when they're ready. Peas hate the heat. They will be done growing completely by the middle of July. So if you miss your early window of planting peas, you might miss them completely. Beans are a warm season. They like to go out more towards the frost date. So you would want to wait till like May 10th to pop those out in the garden. Same with your cucumber family plants. Those are pumpkins, cucumbers, squash, all your melons, your cantaloupes, your watermelons. All those are very happiest if you plant them directly out in the garden after May 10th. But watermelons also take a really long time to grow. So some people will cheat it anyway and start them indoors and just be really careful moving them out. Or start them in a biodegradable pot so you don't have to mess with their roots when you put them out in the garden. You can just pop them pot and all right into the garden. So that's another way to get around that. If you want to grow plants so that you can save your own seeds, you want to look for plants that are open pollinated. So if you check out this Joy Choy right here, see how it says F1? If your seed packet says F1 or hybrid, that is a plant that has been created by breeding 2 parent plants to create one certain kind of offspring. If you grow that plant out and you take the seeds from it, you're going to get plants that are more like one parent or the other parent. You aren't going to necessarily get that same kind of plant that you took from. So to make sure that you get the same kind of plants you took from, you want to have just plain old open pollinated. And the way you can tell is the seed packet will not say hybrid. It will not say F1. It'll just say the name of the plant. If you want to take it even a step further, you can get heirloom seeds. Those are my favorite whenever we can, because that is a way of keeping old seed varieties alive. So heirloom seeds are seeds that have been saved for at least 50 years over generations, and farmers or gardeners will choose the plants that do the very best on their farm and save the seeds from that one. And so over time, you're gradually selecting for plants that are going to be better and better and better adapted to right where you are. So if you see heirloom varieties, a lot of the big seed companies bought out the little seed companies, and a lot of those varieties disappeared. Thousands and thousands disappeared. But if you go around the country, you'll find home gardeners still saving their own seeds. Those heirloom varieties are still out there. And at Badger Rock, we are participating in something called the Heirloom Collard Project to grow collard greens that are heirloom varieties. So any plant that you plant, if you keep it alive long enough, it will make seeds. Collard greens are one of those. They are called a biennial, and that means the first year they grow leaves. The second year, if you can keep them alive to the second year, they'll make flowers that get pollinated and grow seed pods. And if you let those dry on the plants, you open them up and inside you'll get seeds. So if you check this out, this is just one pod. Each collard green plant will have literally hundreds of pods on it. And each seed grows into one collard green. So this is like 20 collard greens in one pod. So you can grow a lot of future seeds in your own garden. And it really is a revolutionary act to save your own seed, because you are taking your ability to grow your own food out of the capitalist system and doing it for yourself and your community, and growing varieties that are best for right where you are living. So I encourage y'all to grow plants for seeds. And if you are not sure how, we're going to have some seed saving workshops here at Badger Rock too, so check it out. We will also be having an in-person seed starting workshop. So if you want to come out here and do it along with us, we'll have some free seed packets, or the Madison Public Library right now is giving away seeds. They have a seed lending library. You can just show up, grab some seeds, bring them with you if you're not sure how to get going, and we will do it alongside with you in the greenhouse. So speaking of planting seeds, I'm going to show y'all how to do it. Come on over here. So you can get a potting mix or a seeding mix from any hardware store, pretty much, any garden store. Just make sure you don't get one that has a lot of added fertilizers. You don't need all that. You can just get a natural or organic potting or seeding mix, and that will be great for your plants and not be adding a bunch of chemicals into your soil. So it's so easy, really. If you look at a seed packet too, it will tell you the expiration date. This says 2024. That's a pretty new seed. The seed companies want you to think that seeds expire every year and you have to buy new ones every year. You do not have to do that. That's just seed companies trying to make sure they make some money from you. Seeds last a long time. There was one seed that was found, a date palm, that was 3,000 years old, and they planted it and it grew. So don't throw out your seeds just because they're expired. What you do need to sometimes do is plant a few more, because the germination rates, which means how many sprout, will go down over time. So if you have older seeds, maybe plant 2 or 3 in a pot instead of 1 and see what happens. So to plant, since these are pretty new seeds, I really would just do 1 seed in each cell. And I like to just pop them on top of the soil first. And the reason I do that is so that I don't lose track of where I planted. Because if you're just doing this and you plant them all right away, I promise you, you will, if you're like me anyway, you'll lose track. So I just pop 1 seed on top of the soil. 1 seed per cell, 1 seed grows into 1 plant. So 1 little seed packet is like hundreds of plants in most cases. So we're going to just fill up the top of the soil with these seeds, and then I'm going to go along behind and just poke them under. Like I said, twice as deep as the seed is big, so they barely have to be deep at all. Just poke them under there. And I do moisten potting mix and seed mix first. So I usually pop it in a container, something like this, add some water with the hose, mix it up. You don't want it muddy, but you want it just moist. And then you pop them under the soil just a little bit. Make sure you label them, because again, if you're like me, you'll think you'll remember, but by the time you have 6 or 7 flats of plants planted, you'll forget what you planted where. So we usually just use blue tape, painter's tape, and put it on the side of our seed trays, and also put a stick in the seed tray also. So we have it double labeled just in case, with the name of the plant and the date. So I'm going to bring y'all over here to see one exciting thing before we wrap it up for the day. Other things that I do not plant in pots just because they tend to be happier direct seeded out in the garden: spinach, mustard greens, turnip greens, again, all the root crops, radishes, beets, carrots, and peas and beans. Those are kind of my, oh, and then the melon family plants. So cucumbers, watermelons, pumpkins, squash, those things prefer to direct seed. All right. If you check out over here, we have our very first little hot pepper plants that we planted 2 weeks ago popping up. So these are the first 2, y'all. There are going to be more and more every day as the season goes on. This is just the beginning. Growing food is one way we can not only support our mental health right now, being out in the garden, getting our hands in the dirt, breathing the fresh air, remembering to connect with the natural world, but also to grow food for ourselves and our communities. Grow and share, you know. You grow your tomatoes, I'll grow my greens, we can trade. Food can be a great thing to pop into a mutual aid kind of situation where you're sharing with each other. So don't hold back. Get your plants in the ground. Even if you don't have a garden, you can plant in a bucket. You can plant in a pot on your patio. You can grow something anywhere. And we will keep you all posted on those in-person workshops coming up. We're going to have seed starting one on March 22nd, 11 to 12. Pull on up over here. We can start some seeds together. We're going to have a cool season planting workshop to show you all what you can plant out in the garden before that frost date even happens. Some plants are really cold hardy and are good to go to get in the ground about mid-April. And then we'll have a warm season planting workshop on May 10th that will be on how to plant your plants that really do need to wait till that last frost date before you get them out in the garden. So stay tuned for all those. Our summer workshop series is coming up too, and we will look forward to seeing you all next time. Also, where to buy seeds, we'll put in the comments some really awesome seed companies to support that are BIPOC owned or centered seed companies. Check those out. Get your seeds from those if you can. And come and join us. Holler if you have any questions. We're here to support, or if you have any experience of your own that you would like to share, pop it in the comments. Let's learn from each other. And we will see y'all next time.